Hi, listeners. Welcome back to the Lessons from the Playroom podcast. I have a returned guest with me, one of my personal favorite guests. I have, I'm going to tell you what we're going to talk about first, and then I'll tell you who I have. We're actually going to talk about family constellation work, which we've never discussed on this podcast series before. And I have with me the amazing Mili Sarmiento Shoemaker. For those of you that are not familiar with Mili, Mili and I talked about aggression in a past podcast, but the different angle on aggression, more like what comes up, what happens when it's the therapist, right? That's having those aggressive urges inside. So please make sure to go check that out. And we also did one on the concept of attachment to self. So Mili, I think you might be my only guest that I've had 3 times.
And we had another one around
4 times.
owning our clients being our mirrors.
Folks, she's back for the 4th time. That's how much I love this person. I love conversations with you, Mili. But Mili, you're in the hot seat today as we introduce the idea of family constellation work to our audience. But let me go ahead and refresh our listeners a little bit about you. You are a bilingual therapist, teacher, supervisor, originally from Argentina. Now you live in Colorado, fluent in Spanish and English. You specialize in cross-cultural and international work with a passion for child development, family dynamics, supporting those navigating multiple cultures. You're also a certified synergetic play therapist, supervisor, trainer, the whole works. Driven by a deep love for humanity, Mili empowers individuals and families to face life challenges with resilience and authenticity. That is a fact. She believes in the healing power of embracing one's story, cultivating compassion within communities. You are a mama of 2.
I am
married to one cool dude. You love hiking, cooking, nurturing meaningful relationships. You're just a rock star, basically, is what that boils down to. Okay, so Mili, some people may not even be familiar with the concept family constellation. So if you can just introduce us to that, and then we'll start to dive into a little bit about why you love the work, and then how we can apply these principles in our thinking with kids and working with our clients.
Beautiful. Yes. So today we're going to talk a little bit about family constellation, kind of like these the basic concepts around this philosophy, and then we're going to bring it into the clinical work, like what you can bring, even if you never study family constellation, how you can bring this systemic lens into the work that we do with kids.
Great.
So let's start with just talking a little bit about Bert Hellinger. So family constellation is like SPT. It's a live model, a philosophy. It's not just a method that you learn and you apply that it never changes. It will continue to evolve and change as long as we are in this planet, in my opinion. So Bert Hellinger is the originator, if you will. It's going to be you, Lisa, in 100 years. We're going to talk about you, but SPT is going to change and evolve and look a little bit different. So Bert Hellinger was a German psychotherapist that originally was a priest. He was a Catholic priest for many years. And then he left that to be a psychotherapist. He lived in South Africa with the Zulu community for many, many years. And what he loved about that community was their respect and love for their ancestors. So when he left, the Catholic religion to be a psychotherapist, he studied many modalities. So family constellation, like SPT, is influenced by many different modalities, like psychoanalysis, Gestalt therapy, systemic approach, family therapy, so many, even like his spirituality, like when he left being a priest, he took with him his spirituality, right? Like he didn't there was a very important time in his life where he kind of like decided to leave that, when he realized that what he put first wasn't like what Bert Hellinger put first in his work wasn't the dogma, wasn't the ideas. And what he put first was the people, the relationships, what families and systems will bring into the space that he was in. Mm. So he's someone very well known, and he's like those people that create amazing things, in my opinion. You're gonna find people that love him, and you're gonna find people that question him a lot. So just know that he's someone interesting. And what I want to talk about a little bit is kind of like the way that he looked at systems. And when we say systems, he specifically talks about family systems, but it's not just family systems, right? Like systems is like, we can think about like, for example, as therapist, right? As play therapist in the US, let's just narrow it down to the US, there is a system, right? There is a system that we are part of. But in this conversation, we're gonna put the focus in family system, okay? But these orders that I'm gonna talk about applies to all systems. So what he noticed, what Bert Hellinger noticed, is that in every system, there are three basic labs, orders of lab, he called them. The first one is belonging, which this means everyone that has been part of the family system or that is part belongs. Everyone and every experience. Part of us, right? Sometimes we tend to exclude, to put aside that we don't like, that our animal brain, right, doesn't want, because we're not comfortable with that. But what he says is that many times in family systems, there are symptoms that are being expressed because so we're going to talk about three orders. One of these three orders is not in place. So the first one is belonging, right? And we're going to make sense of this in the context of play therapy, okay?
Can I just say something real quick? So you just, and this may be totally where you're going, but when I was studying on intergenerational trauma and looking at the intergenerational patterns in families, one of the things that I kept reading and understanding was that anyone excluded in a family system from a prior whatever will show up again at some point in the system, because the system will not alienate someone out of the system.
Yes, you got it.
Yeah, I love it. I love it so much. It's like you will belong.
Yes, you will belong, and the system doesn't judge. So the system has space, has love, if you will, for everyone and everything. We tend to judge when we feel uncomfortable with certain experiences. Yeah. The purpose of when something has been excluded or someone has been excluded, future generations will experience it, will attract similar, patterns, so the system can love it, can make sense for it.
This is so good.
And this is going to be so connected with play therapy, so hang in there. So the second order is hierarchy. There is an order where everyone in the family system has its own place. So this idea that there is a natural order based on time and roles. For example, me, Mili, I am a mother of two, right? I came before my kids. I have my own place in the family system as a mother in relationship to my kids. When that, and we see a lot of this in therapy, we're going to talk about parentified. When I am not in my place of being a mother, right, to my two kids, this order is not being in place. And maybe some of my kids is trying to play out the mother role in my system. Therefore, we're going to start to see symptoms that speak to this order. So we, the family members, can wake up and look at, which is my place in my family system. When you are in your place and you respect others' places, so meaning respecting that my parents are my parents and they came before me. And even if I don't agree with the life that they created, is their life. There is power in that, right? And there is wisdom in that. When I respect that, I am in my place. And when I'm in my place, I'm in my power. When I'm occupying someone else's space, I am not one with life. I am stuck. I'm not, we get this a lot as therapists when we have clients that are feeling stuck, they are feeling that they're not inspired, that they don't have energy, that they're feeling depressed. Many times it's because they're not in their place in the family system. And the next one is there is a balance between giving and taking. So the fair exchange that DeMartini talks a lot about it. So in all relationships, except the parents, we're going to talk about that, there has to be a balance between giving, and they even say giving and taking, because the giving and receiving, the receiving is more passive, right? I'm receiving. But the taking is like, I'm taking what is mine. So when you think of relationships with siblings, with partners, when this order is in place and there's a balance between giving and taking, there's a flow in the relationship. When there is not in place this order, then we start to see either that person that is giving too much is feeling resentful, right? With parents, from a family constellation perspective, kids cannot give back to parents what they have received, because what we received from this perspective, what we have received as kids is life from our parents. And life, it's something that you cannot pay back. The way that kids pay back to their parents or give back to their parents is by creating a meaningful life, is by giving back to the world, to the society that they're a part of. So these are the basic orders. And what we're going to talk about is how we can make sense of this from a systemic lens with the clients that we work with.
Yeah.
So
and even in that last one, Mili, you can hear the undertone of his spiritual belief system too, right? That was also brought into that. That's very cool. Yeah.
And even these three orders also are applicable in the relationship that we therapists have with clients. So for us to get curious, am I giving too much as a therapist? Am I giving what I don't have to give? Am I not asking what is mine? Am I not taking what is mine? So all of this, even though we're going to talk in the context of how we work with families, but it's also applicable in our relationship with the clients that we work with.
Yeah.
Okay. Where do you want to go with this?
Well, what I'm just hearing, I mean, I know you use the word fair exchange for that last principle, but I'm actually hearing that under all of them, that the system is seeking a certain order. And
a certain balance.
Yeah, a certain kind of balance, because the system's in balance. If I'm hearing you say like, look, there's certain roles in a family system, they're going to be filled by somebody, whether they're being filled in a particular order, that's a different question, but they are going to be filled. And so, yeah, so this idea of the system itself, I love it, is alive, and it's trying to find its own balance, its own equanimity, every person within it is trying to find their place within the order and the balance and the equanimity. And that what I'm hearing is that, and when they can't, when the system can't, then the system starts to show symptoms in order to try to catch the attention, theoretically, of the family members to wake up to, am I getting this?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's usually the answer. From a family constellation approach, we believe that our ancestors, so those that came before us, that something, so when we think about trauma, right? Trauma is when something was too much for the nervous system, and that we need to leave information out in order to survive, right? So we know that our ancestors had trauma. And many of those traumatic experiences weren't fully integrated because they were on survival mode. So that is what is also passed on to future generations. The intragenerational, trauma is passed on current generations. And the intention of that is not because life is punishing us. It's those ancestors are trying to be seen, to be kind of like complete, if you will, that they didn't have a chance to complete then.
Yeah, that's how I love to think of it too, because I do think, well, more and more people are talking about intergenerational trauma, but I hear it talked about in sort of this yucky way, like it's this thing, this yuck thing, this thing that was done to me. And the way I like to look at it is, no, it's actually part of an offering. It's actually, in my generation, I experienced something that I perceived as challenging. I did the best I could with it. I couldn't quite integrate it, but I also am going to hand down that information almost as a look. If you were to encounter the same situation, here's information that you might need or want for your survival. So it's also like a passing down of survival information, but also this sort of, I couldn't do this. Could you help me? So that the next generation helps the generations, and we just keep passing down that which we can't integrate.
Yes.
Yeah.
And from a family constellation perspective, each of us, so let's say in each family system, right, each individual, we are entangled, meaning we have this hidden connection with someone that came before us. And so let's say I'm debating to share about my story because I don't want to expose my dad, but
well, can I share a funny story?
Yes.
So my mom has passed away, as you know. Well, I mean, to me, it's these sort of interesting, subtle pieces of, there were aspects and qualities about my mother that I wouldn't say that the rest of the family found to be the most pleasant. We'll just put it like that, right?
They were activating.
They were activating, right? They were activating, connected to her, connected to her work, right? Anyway, my oldest nephew was just in town this past weekend, and he started doing what he was doing. And my brother and I looked at each other and went, "Are you kidding? That's mom." Right? Like, it didn't go anywhere. Now, right now, those pieces are being expressed through my eldest nephew. And my brother and I just had the biggest chuckle out of it. Like, mom's still here.
Yes. And so coming back to this, because there is this idea, I just did a podcast with Liliana Bailon about this, which was about intergenerational trauma. There is this idea that, why do I have to, like solve, or why do I even have to carry this that is not mine? This is my point. It is yours. Your soul, if you believe that we have a soul, I do believe that we have a soul, is entangled. So let's go back to your nephew. It's not random why your nephew is connected to your mother.
Exactly.
Something about him, something about his soul, something about his whole being needs to embody that, not because it belongs to your mom. It maybe started with your mom, but something about his purpose in life is so connected to that. So when people, complain about, why do I have to, be responsible for what they did before, it's because something about this is yours. It's to own what is yours. It might not have started with you, but the fact that you're expressing it, the fact that you are feeling it, the fact that you are expressing symptoms about it, is because aspects of this are yours.
Totally. And I can see that those pieces are connected to the work that my mom was also unable to complete. And you can almost see like what he wants to study and where he wants to go is almost, meaningful for him. It's part of his mission, but simultaneously there's aspects of it that are going to be completing some of my mom's work, that it's both. Yeah.
It's both.
It's both.
We are connected to, for a family system perspective, even those that are deceased and are not here anymore, they're still alive. The energy is still in the system. It's just transformed. It's expressing, it's being expressed in a different way.
Yeah.
So when we are working with kids,
Yeah.
we're working with all of this.
Yeah, exactly. Which I love. I love that we're naming that, because I think in a lot of our training, we're trained to isolate, right? So we isolate this child and this child's symptoms. And a lot of play therapists aren't really trained through a systemic kind of a lens, versus even this curiosity of what in this is meaningful for the child, and what of this is also part of the larger system that's being expressed through this child. And we may not even totally ever know the answer to that, but even just to be curious about that, I think opens up possibility for the energy to move. Would you say that?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to, I remember when we first started working together, Lisa, you will say this, that really stuck with me. You will say, kids, so our kids, if I'm a parent, like my kids will express that,
Mm-hmm.
that I repress, or that I have a hard time to be in relationship with. And that is connected to the order of belonging.
Mm-hmm.
Kids in the clinical space are going to express
Mm-hmm.
or are going to feel attracted to that the parents have a really hard time to be in relationship with.
Yeah.
So as a therapist, if I'm not aware of this information, if of course, not that there is one way, but I'm just going to invite you to start to get curious about if you have this idea in mind that the kids' symptoms are also an expression of an incomplete
Mm-hmm.
experience that the parents had or have in life.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we work with that?
Totally. So I'm going to ask an interesting question too, because you said system isn't just family. I know we said we're going to focus on that. But Millie, I find the same thing in the relationship between the therapist and the child.
Yes.
So if we're just going to plant the seed on that, just that equal curiosity. So not only why, what's the wisdom in these symptoms for this whole family system, but also what's the wisdom in these symptoms for the therapist that's working with that particular family, and what is also being activated and mirrored as an incomplete within the therapist.
100%, which this connects, the episode that we had about, how our clients are mirrors.
Yeah.
When we talk about aggression, what is going on for us, attachment to self.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if it would be worth to just explore some of that, right? Like how these principles applied. Like I'm happy. Part of who wants to share how, like when I discovered SPT gave me the gift to come back here, to find myself, to find my own individuality. I come from a culture that we are all enmeshed and we're all together and everything is in community, right? So when I discovered SPT was like, wait, there is a Mili in all of this. There is, you're right, like a way of just coming back home. And what Family Constellation is giving me is like a bigger lens around where I come from, like the roots. And that's why I see like how SPT and Family Constellation do this. They like come together and play together so well, because it's like I finally have like a complete cycle, right, around those two places.
Well, so let's explore this practically. We have a client that comes into the playroom who is struggling with feeling like they are the adult in the relationship. Okay, so we can go on that one. And part of the magic of the play therapy process, again, I can't speak to all modalities, but at least through an SPT lens, is as this child gets an opportunity to attach themselves, to discover what is true for them, they also begin to discover their place.
Yes.
And where they're giving too much, where they're taking too much, like as they start to find themselves in the context of in which they exist. And you and we've talked about this a lot in SPT training, that when one person in the system shifts, the system shifts. So even just the impact of, as a child begins to discover what's mine and what's not mine, gets to orient back into themselves and gets to begin to question hey, is that my responsibility? I don't know if that's my responsibility to be taking care of my parent, right? Hold on a second. I'm 5. I'm supposed to be take care of my teddy bear, right? Like that's my responsibility, right now. I gotta work on picking up my toys, right? That's my responsibility, not caretaking my parent emotionally kind of a thing. Um, my belief is that the impact of that inner discovery moves the system. Like, how could there not be a shift in the system?
Mm.
Now, sometimes the system can move with that and adapt. And I've also seen it where the system itself is so anchored into their positioning and their roles that the 5-year-old sort of force isn't enough to shift the whole system, right? The system sort of keeps the child locked into their role, but it doesn't still take away from the gift in this child continuing to grapple with and begin to make sense of who am I in this context? What feels right to me? How do I trust myself? How do I come back into connection with myself? Will you speak to that from a
Yeah.
family constellation perspective?
I agree with you that many times the work that we do with the kids
Mhm,
is enough to initiate
mhm.
movement
Yeah.
in the system.
Mhm.
Other times, as you say, like the roles and the dynamics and the expectations are so ingrained, so like in one stuck in one place that that it is not enough
Yeah. The
energy
system
to
almost
create.
needs like a shock, like a
Yes.
shock or something. Yeah.
So like for me, right? So for many years, I only worked with the kid. And
Mhm,
in my opinion, that was enough. And I was able to see lots of changes.
mhm.
As I change in how I work, I right now don't imagine working with a kid without working with the parents because I truly love to see, like, I don't know, that's my intensity. Like I like to see change from a different angle. Um, but I think, like if we go back to this idea that sometimes we don't get to work with the system, right? Sometimes parents are not available. Sometimes parents are not in the picture. The kid will experience with us what it feels like to explore that new role,
Yep.
that new place.
Yep.
The kid will take with him or her or they, them,
Mhm.
that felt sense, and maybe eventually they will get to play that, right, in a different way. My experience is when I'm working with parents, what I love about these 3 ideas, these 3 orders, is that usually one of these orders is not in place.
Mhm.
So, for example, the parentified child. Clearly, the kid is not in its place as a child and is
Mhm.
being, mom's mom, let's say. But what I even think about when I think from a generational perspective, if the kid is playing out the mother's role, is because someone else is missing, which it is
Mhm.
grandma.
Mhm.
Grandma, like the mother's perception was that she didn't have a mother.
Mhm.
That's why she's attracting her son to be mom. So when
Mhm.
I work, with families, I first work from a place of, okay, there is always order, there is always balance.
Yeah.
But we know that sometimes the balance that is being expressed in the system creates symptoms, and that those symptoms are telling us, hey, maybe there is another way to be in
Mhm.
relationship.
Yeah.
So what I am attracting in my work with families are parents that are more curious about this.
Yeah.
So instead of like labeling as, okay, the kid is being parentified and name that as, this shouldn't be like this, right? I get curious about, okay, what is the purpose in this? What is the function that the kid is being, is playing in the system? And then I get curious with the parents from a
Mhm.
place of curiosity,
Mhm.
where I get to bring in, right, their dynamics, their relationship with their parents. Like, when I do an intake from the beginning, they know that this is my lens, that I work from a systemic lens. And I think that I think families are open for this. But if you're a therapist that you're not trained in this and you don't feel comfortable about this, you can still bring this lens into the work that you do with kids.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. Even just looking at in the work of what you're doing in the playroom. I mean, when we look at the points in the play where the child begins to, I know in some models they call it show mastery, right? And others, like in SPT, we call it overcoming the challenges, others talk about empowerment, others talk about, all of the, like there's different names for it. Oftentimes what you see in the play is are the three, sorry, what did you call it?
Orders.
The three
Yeah.
orders, right?
Yeah.
Right. So all of a sudden you see the baby doll or the baby being taken care of in the say proper structure, or in the hierarchy that it wants to be taken care of it, right? You start to see you see the balance, right? You see the balance of the give and the take. And so I even think that whole lens is interesting from, look, when you're looking at how do you know when the work is done in the playroom, or how do you even start to track change in the play process, or how do you start to see that a child is healing? You're going to see the three orders begin to come into a different configuration. And what I'm hearing you say is that at least one will be out of place, but you could have all three out of place.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. And we tend to see when clients come to us, my experience is that we tend to see at least two out of place, because that's where you see the most symptoms. But what the kid is, so we know, right, that we just said this, right? Like the kid can experience this new order, if you will. And even if we don't see huge changes in the system, the kid is creating a new template that makes sense to his perception of himself and to his perception of his system, right?
Yep. Yes, which then is they have something then to go after, right? It's in the, the research shows you need something to compare something to.
Yes.
Right. If you don't have something to compare something to, then you don't know that there's another option. And so sometimes in the playroom, we're offering something to compare the experience to. And even if the child can't just move into that in their current, in their current system, well, they have another option inside.
Yes, they have an option.
And
when as therapists, right, like these three orders, right, we also, our orders also show up in the relationship, right, with our clients. And we tend to have one of these orders out of place. So for example, for me was the balance between giving and taking. For a long time, I was an overgiver because I had a hard time to take. When you give too much, is because you cannot take what is yours or what you feel that you deserve. So I will attract clients that needed that. They needed that, the therapist that went out of her way, right, all the time. And I had a really hard time setting limits with parents because I was overgiven. And right now I feel that I'm in a different place, right? But that was my own journey in being able to find even that order in my family system. And
so, Mili, I'm just going to name this as a play therapy system. We have this one out of order. So play therapists in general have been trained or have been taught that it is better to give than to receive. And it has resulted in a lot of play therapists not being able to set back. I mean, if someone's struggling with boundaries, we know that there's something out of order in that particular one, right? Like not being able to set boundaries, not being able to charge what they're worth. Yeah, not being able to charge what they're worth, not being able to hold the line, not being able to deal with someone being mad or upset with them, and I mean, all of those pieces, which I think is really, really prevalent in our field.
And also the belonging. I feel that in our field, there are some, when we talked about aggression, right, that there is not a lot of, acceptance or space to explore aggression in its full expression. Right. So I also think that, and this also is connected to culture, right? Some cultures are more comfortable with certain emotions than other cultures, right? So I also think that belonging, like, are we really as therapists? Can we, and when we think about our window of tolerance, right? Like, can we make space for all the emotions, or are there certain emotions that we exclude and that we put, or certain profile of clients that we exclude. I will never work with, well, there's information there. You're excluding something, which is not, wrong or good. It's just information around your own history, your own narrative.
Well, let's add another one too, that a play therapist should look a particular way or should act a particular way. The number of shoulds in our field for play therapists also, again, I think go into this idea around belonging. Like, I think a question, I think why SPT resonates for so many therapists is exactly what you said at the beginning, which is there was permission in there for you to belong, like either belong to a community, belong within yourself, find your place. And so I think that question, can a therapist really be themselves in our field? That's a really interesting question. Is there truly permission? I would say no.
I think it's very conditional.
Yeah.
Certain parts are very welcome.
Yeah.
Other parts are very uncomfortable. And I think, in our field, we are turning into, I feel that we're moving into being very like politically correct. There are certain things you have to say as a therapist. There are certain labels, there are certain things that you must name in order to belong. I question all of that because we leave information out, we leave others out.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna take a breath on that. So Mili, what I'm hearing big picture is, well, first of all, listeners, if this is an exciting conversation, go study family constellations, reach out to Mili. Mili does trainings for organizations and all that, presentations and all that. So you can also reach out to Mili and get information there. Actually, as I'm saying that, let's just throw out your website, Mili. Where can people find you?
Integrating Mundos is my website. If you type Mili Shoemaker, you're going to find me.
Great. And it'll also be in the show notes as well. But beyond that, even if we're not trained, what I'm appreciating is that you're widening our lens, right? You're offering this beautiful invitation for us to think bigger than what's just directly in front of us, and to really honor that what's in front of us has its tethers in so many different places. Part of it's meaningful for the client, part of it's meaningful for the family, and part of it's meaningful also for the larger family system, generations, ancestry, et cetera, et cetera. And that this child in front of us is really, how do I want to say that? Because there's a beauty that I'm seeing and feeling, that I'm here, like there's an opportunity in here within the child for their own growth, for the growth of the system itself. That feels important to me, because I think sometimes when play therapists see the symptoms that the kids are creating, or they see or hear about what's happening in the family system, they go right to judgment. Like, oh my goodness, this is awful. This is the worst thing. This is a bad family system. And there's like an invitation here to look at the beauty of a family system.
Yes.
I don't know if you want to add into that or not, but that's what I'm hearing.
I just had a session with a kid that I want to just share a little bit how this shows up in a very simple session.
Yeah.
So I just had a session with a little girl. She's from Central America. And what the family excludes, in my opinion, is beauty. Beauty is expressed in a very, in one way, which it is by woman having to use a lot of makeup, woman having to have their hair done, having to wear like specific clothes. So what she did in the play, through babies, she was playing with babies, and she was naming about a particular baby that had a darker skin that she didn't like, that she needed to put makeup on it, she needed to put some lipstick, right? So it was all about like beauty is expressed in one form. I'm holding that baby. And it's my baby, because she said she's your baby. Even though you're lighter, you have a dark baby, right? So what I'm saying, very intentional in my statements, is, oh, baby, you're so beautiful just the way you are. Yeah. You don't need makeup, to feel beautiful. You don't need, but if you want to, you can, right? Like, So what I'm doing here, I'm respecting the family's values. I'm not challenging mom that she shouldn't. She's who she is, right? She wears a lot of makeup and that's okay, right? But she also chose a therapist that looks different. I'm not the typical, Latina stereotype. I look a little bit different. And what I'm doing in that session is including different types of beauty, right? And then the kid gets to experience that, right? Gets to experience, well, I don't always have to wear makeup. I don't always have to look good with my hair, or I can just love myself for who I am and not always for the way that I look, right? So that order of belonging, right, is a simple order that shows up in the play by what the family is excluding and how important it is as a therapist to not judge it, but just go with it and be creative around showing another way. So the kid has different options at the end of the day. That's it. That's all I'm doing.
Yep. So they can figure out what's true for them.
Totally.
And what belonging means for them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And play it out and practice and see what, what feels true to them. And that is a life journey process, right? It takes, it took me many years to be comfortable in my own skin and just be okay with who I am. So it's just, like, I don't know. I just like to see it from this perspective and just know that what we're doing influence, but at the end of the day, they go back to their system, in my opinion. And that's where they belong. And that's is also meaningful, the system that they are part of.
Yeah. There's
Right?
wisdom.
There's so much wisdom.
There's wisdom in the system.
So much wisdom. And who am I to say that that kid should be with someone else? I could never do that job because I see wisdom and love wherever I go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Well, everyone, I hope you found that as interesting as I did. I love talking to you about this stuff, Mili. It's so fun. Mili, any final thoughts here as we wrap up?
Just get curious about your orders, get curious about, I don't know, what that you tend to judge and, that you don't want in your life is what you is where your work is. My invitation to get curious about that.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, everyone, wherever you are in the world, take care of yourself. You are the most important toy in the playroom. Until next time, everyone.